Picture a cold concrete slab bolted onto a side of a family house, a single tube light buzzing overhead, and a 16-year-old kneeling beside a rusted old hatchback, wondering if he'd just wasted every euro he had. That car cost him €600. The seller practically ran to the bank with the cash. Rust on the wheel arches, a loose door handle, an exhaust that rattled above 3,000 RPM. Nobody else saw anything worth saving. He saw a beginning. The space wasn't really a garage, just a slab with a dead freezer and shelves of paint tins from projects that quietly died. He shoved the freezer aside, hung one bare light, and pulled the car in. He had no idea what he was doing. That part matters. He learned from a laptop propped on a stool because a proper monitor wasn't in the budget. Pause the video, try the step, rewind because it went wrong. He snapped a bolt clean off and burned 40 minutes fighting an extractor. He hooked a vacuum line up backwards and the engine shuddered like it was choking until he found the mistake. Every error cost him time, money he didn't have. But every error taught him something no tutorial ever could. The first real change was a cold air intake. Weeks of research, one afternoon of installing it. The sound dropped lower, sharpened at the top end. Barely any extra power, but it sounded like there was. And at 16, that illusion was everything. Next came lowered springs. He nearly lost a finger compressing one without the right tool, until a neighbor lent him a proper compressor. He worked slow, careful. The car dropped 15 millimeters. He drove for an hour just to feel it. This is how every real builder starts. Not in a clean workshop, not with training, but in a cramped garage with the wrong tools and a stubborn refusal to stay confused. 2 years later, he's 18, and the Civic has been through a dozen versions. New wheels, aftermarket suspension, a front lip he painted himself, crooked, but only if you look closely. He knows this car by feel now. The cold start rattle, the one bump on one street that makes it groan in a way nothing else does. 6 months earlier, he found the meets, Sunday evenings, a parking lot, 40 modified cars, and a culture built entirely around them. The first time, he felt like an outsider walking into a room mid-conversation. He parked beside a slammed Volkswagen. Its owner walked over and asked about his suspension setup. They talked for an hour. The meets taught him what the garage never could. He saw builds he never imagined. He learned the difference between something that actually works and something that only looks like it does. Someone pointed out his wheel fitment was off in a way he'd never have caught alone. Someone else warned him his brakes needed attention before he lowered the car any further. He also learned the culture's harsh honesty. Nobody softens a bad build because pretending it's fine is the real insult. His car got cleaner, not louder, not more extreme, cleaner. Restraint, it turns out, is the harder discipline. At 20, someone from the meets invited him to a real track day, timed sessions, coaching for beginners. He expected to be fast. He discovered he barely knew how to drive his own car. An instructor rode the first 3 laps and said almost nothing until the end. Braking too early and too hard, carrying too much speed into corners, losing it on exit. He spent the rest of the day fixing one habit at a time. Driving a modified street car and driving on a circuit, it's the gap between hearing a song and performing it. After that day, the modifications changed direction. Brake pads built for heat, fluid that wouldn't boil under repeated hard stops, tires with real grip, because grip is the foundation everything else sits on. The rear seats came out, the spare tire came out, weight the track had no use for. The car got faster, so did he. Nobody could separate the two anymore. That's the part nobody tells you before you live it. Car and driver grow together, or not at all. A fast car under an undeveloped driver just repeats the same mistake quicker. At 23, the Civic was gone, sold to a kid who reminded him painfully of himself. The money, his savings, and a loan from his father bought something with real ceiling room. A second-generation Eclipse GSX, all-wheel drive, turbocharged from the factory. This time the build was different, every part chosen for a reason. The turbo, upgraded because the stock one choked at his power target. The fuel system, upgraded because more power demands more fuel. The intercooler, upgraded because hot air is thin air, and thin air makes nothing. He tuned the engine management himself for the first time, borrowing a setup from a friend deeper into the craft, spending 2 full weekends inside the software. The first time he made a change, logged the result, and watched the numbers respond. Something shifted. The engine was a system, the ECU was its translator. He'd been a passenger in this process his whole life, now he was driving it. The Eclipse hit 300 horsepower on a conservative setting, on a dyno at a shop he trusted, not a guess, a printed chart. The drive home was the most focused 30 minutes of his life behind the wheel. At 26, people in the regional scene knew his name. Not famous, known. His builds got shared. He started helping others, not for money, just because a problem was interesting or because someone trusted him with their car. A friend Subaru had passed through 3 different tuners and still ran rough under boost. One Saturday with a laptop and a wideband sensor, and he found a vacuum leak so small 3 other people had walked right past it. The car ran clean for 2 years for the first time. Building and diagnosing, he realized, aren't the same skill. Building is knowing how things fit. Diagnosing is knowing why they didn't. He built a front-wheel drive car that put 500 horsepower to the ground on a platform never meant to handle it, engineering his own traction solution after the car nearly put him through a wall in testing. A Japanese car culture magazine featured the build. 47 messages arrived from strangers in a week. By 29, he was doing this for money, not occasionally, consistently. A small unit, a shared dyno, a laptop running 7 tuning platforms, a 3-week waiting list. Working on someone else's car changes the standard entirely. With your own money, you can gamble a little. With someone else's, the standard becomes absolute. Customers arrived with cheap tunes gone wrong, some fixable, some genuinely dangerous, forcing conversations nobody wants to have. He specialized in things most tuners avoid: forced induction on naturally aspirated platforms, ethanol conversions, obscure domestic engines nobody bothered learning. The community saw him differently now. Not someone with a good build, someone with a practice. At 33, he had a real shop, 3 bays, 2 lifts, his own dyno, 2 full-time staff, 1 trained from nothing into someone genuinely gifted. People drove hours to reach him. He turned away builds that weren't right, even when the customer didn't understand why. Cars he tuned started winning time attack events. One held a regional class record. He began teaching, too. Workshops, seminars, writing that spread the knowledge faster than any one person discovering it alone ever could. The business side, invoices, insurance, equipment failing at the worst moment, proved harder than any engine ever had. He solved it the same way he solved everything mechanical, systematically. At 38, a car sat in his shop destined to break a world record. Not hopefully, certainly. He'd run the numbers 500 times, every part chosen without compromise, every variable understood, the driver the best he'd ever worked alongside. The car was a stripped, rebuilt Skyline, carrying a hand-built engine producing numbers that would have sounded like fiction 20 years earlier, built himself over 9 months because nobody else would understand it the way he did. The first attempt fell short. It revealed a fuel delivery flaw hiding at the top of 4th gear. He fixed it that night. The second day, the car ran clean. The record fell by a margin that surprised even him. He didn't post about it right away. He drove home, sat in his kitchen with something hot in his hands, and thought about a concrete slab, a dead freezer, and a laptop balanced on a stool. The distance between that night and this one felt impossible to measure. And yet every step led directly to the next. By 42, 11 people he'd trained were running their own shops. A car he'd built sat in a museum of Japanese automotive history in Tokyo. He stood in front of engineers from the very manufacturers he'd learned from and spoke for 40 minutes. He still worked with his hands, though not on everything. The business demanded too much for that. But the builds that mattered, he stayed close to. Because the moment you stop touching the work yourself, the knowledge stops being real and starts becoming theory. Somewhere tonight, a 16-year-old is kneeling in a cold garage beside a car they overpaid for, watching a video on a laptop propped on something never meant to hold it. They're going to strip a bolt. They're going to feel stupid. They're going to get something right eventually and feel a pull that follows them for the next 20 years. Most will get somewhere. Some will reach exactly where this story ended. A few will go further, because they'll learn everything he learned, and then they'll learn what he never did.